We open in welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomac Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice. And now I would like to introduce our guest minister for today, Reverend Leika Lewis. Her pronouns are they, she. She is a UU poet, a chaplain, and a humanist theologian. Leika received their DMV, I'm sorry, I'm watching too much news. Their Master of Divinity, thank you, it's a little different, from Chicago Theological Seminary in April of this year. A native of the DC area, Leika has spent the last 20 years working with churches, nonprofits, and large organizations to transform conflict and build inclusive culture. Leika now lives in Milford, Delaware, from which she traveled all the way today. Thank you very much. With their family. And now, welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. This congregation is a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home where we inspire each other to live our values. Together, we care in community, grow in spirit, and act for justice. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we are delighted you decided to join us today in person and online. Welcome.
And as we light our chalice, please join in reciting words from our new shared UU values. We're going to do the short version right for today. Love is at the center of Unitarian Universalism. Love is the practice of our living tradition. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to help everyone flourish with dignity, accessible and inclusive communities, honor the web of life by protecting Earth and all beings from exploitation, be beloved community by dismantling racism and all systemic oppression, cultivate generosity by freely faith, presence, and resources, celebrate diversity by embracing our differences, love and respect, transform the world with love by growing together spiritually and ethically. What was it like? Those first moments of swirling possibility, a universe of sparks holding the promise of infinity. In some ways, it's a question without an answer, as all the best questions are. But I like to think it was a little like this. These first few moments of swirling possibility, this messy, imperfect, beautiful space we create together. Come into this place full of humanity, learning to trust together in the beautiful chaos of growth and change, a universe of souls holding the promise of infinity. Come, let us worship together. Okay, in just a moment, I am going to ask for some help from any of the kids who are willing to help out with this. Thank you, Kate. So if there are any kids who are willing to join Kate with helping with this Stardust blessing, then in just a moment, I'm going to give you a moment to think before I jump you into the middle of it. So kids who might be willing to help, I want you to think about the thing that is inside of you that makes you glow in a special way. The thing that is inside of you, maybe it's joy, maybe it's bravery, maybe it's unicorn sparkles, maybe it's imagination, which probably goes along with the unicorn sparkles. But whatever it is, each of us has something that is really special that we bring to the world. So if you are a kid who is willing to help, be thinking for a moment here what that thing is for you. Now, have you ever looked at the stars and maybe you've seen it in person, or maybe you have seen it in a picture or a video, or maybe someone has told you about it. But do you know what bioluminescence is? Yes. So these in the water, in a number of places, and I have always wanted to go swimming with the sea sparkles. Haven't gotten to do it yet, but it's on my list. Have you ever thought about the fact that the thing that sparkles in the sea and the thing that sparkles in the sky is also the thing that sparkles in us? Now, I mean that both figuratively and literally. So, just like I was asking the kids to think about, there are things inside of us that make us sparkle as people. But also, scientists have been discovering that the same thing that makes bioluminescent organisms glow is also a part of our cells. If we are stardust, if we are made of the same thing as the universe, and we are made of the same thing that glows, then scientists said, we wonder. And they started checking, and sure enough, we can't see it with with the naked eye, but using instruments, they have discovered that we humans glow also. Now, I personally happen to think when we start talking about the figurative, that kids are better at glowing than grown-ups. Sometimes when we start growing up, we forget a little bit how to glow. And a lot of times you kids are wonderful and here, and the grown-ups stand up here and tell you things, right? So today we're gonna flip that. So if any of the kids are willing to come up here and help me, you can come on up now if you're willing to help. Is there anyone who wants to join Kate with helping? You okay? It got you good, huh? Are you okay? Okay. May I ask for y'all to be in charge of the Stardust? So we have a special, it's like I said, it's hard to see the sparkles that are inside of us. So the kids, we have a special Stardust powder. Yeah, you can pass it down. Maybe, yeah, just get just a little dab on your finger. And if you want to use both, colors, then you can take a dab of each. And pick another finger and take a dab of each. All right. Now, did you think of a word? Did you think of the thing? Did you? Now, if that is marvelous. Okay. If you are a grown-up who would like to get a Stardust blessing from one of these wonderful young people, then you can raise your hand and they will come. Young people, just put a little dab of Stardust on the grown-up's hand using the dabs that you have, and we will share the sparkle of Stardust through everyone. All right, if you're a grown-up who wants a blessing from a kid, and they will tell you what your blessing is. They'll share their word or one of their words with you. And you can take a little bit of that sparkle too. All right, go ahead.
This is an excerpt from 1977's golden record that was sent into space in our greeting to the rest of the universe. And it says, "We step out of our solar system into the universe, seeking only peace and friendship, to teach if we are called upon, or be taught if we are fortunate. We know full well that our planet and all its inhabitants are but a small part of this immense universe that surrounds us, and it is with humility and hope that we take this step."
I've always been in awe, perhaps even a little bit envious, of those of you who are adventurers. Now, don't get me wrong, I love to explore, but I prefer my exploration to be seasoned with a solid bit of the familiar. I have a running argument with the universe, I suppose, and also those in my circle who think like engineers. My nesting partner and I have joked that I was born without the "what does that do" gene. And of course, because life is funny like that, I gave birth to a child who always wants to find out what does that do, when I'm always worried about what if that's the eject button. Luckily, they don't seem to build many everyday items with eject buttons, so I've been spared so far. And also, because life is funny like that, despite being someone who is so easily scared by what if, I love to imagine what now. When I was a tiny child, I used to watch reruns of Star Trek, the original series, with my dad. When Star Trek: The Next Generation, which is set nearly 100 years after the original timeline ends, began, we watched that too, avidly. And so on and so forth with each new Star Trek that came out. And I like Star Wars too, so I'm not taking sides in that fight. Through some of the most pivotal moments and explorations in my life, I was watching the Star Trek universe also grow and expand, off on their mission to seek out new life and new civilizations, and to boldly go where no one has gone before. And do you know what I've learned as someone who's never learned to speak Klingon, but could probably otherwise easily be called a Trekkie? Maybe the missions were bold, but that boldly part, it's BS most of the time, until it isn't. Because the people on those bold missions, they were people just like us. They had hope, they got scared, they gave up, and they kept going. They learned new things about themselves, new things about how they were together, and their connection to the universe as specks of stardust floating in a community in space. Most days, they didn't feel bold at all. Most days, I don't feel bold at all. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But we find ourselves in the middle of something bold. As many of you probably know, the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations just approved a new version of Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, including new shared values. Some might, and have, said that this is a bold new direction for the UUA. Some even find it a frightening one. I say that we're just putting into words the truths of who we choose to be in the world. Justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity with love at the center. Now, some enterprising and creative soul noticed that arranged in a certain way, the acrostic of our shared values was JETPIG. And so, the unofficial mascot of Article 2 was born, JETPIG, powered by love. If you want a bit of delight, spend some time Googling UU JETPIG. It's lots of fun. But the passage of Article 2, as important as it was, is not what I'm talking about when I say we're in the middle of something bold. The incredible novelist and someone I would call one of the prophets or truth tellers of our times, Becky Chambers, writes in their book, To Be Taught If Fortunate, from the perspective of a future spacefarer. It's understandable why humans stopped living in space in the 2020s. How can you think of the stars when the seas are spilling over? How can you spare thought for alien ecosystems when your cities are too hot to inhabit? How can you trade fuel and metal and ideas when the lines on every map are in flux? How can anyone be expected to care about the questions of worlds above when the questions of the world you're stuck on, the most vital criteria of home and health and safety, remain unanswered? What wonderful, insightful, and soul-wrenching questions. And that doesn't even take into account being in the midst of another historic election year with race and religion-based violence happening all over the world. How do we care about the bigger picture of the universe when the details in front of us loom so very large themselves? Well, luckily for us, JETPIG has the answer. And since this isn't a TV show that demands a dramatic build to the finish, I'll even tell you the answer now. It's comfort, connection, and community. Now, one of the things I love most about JETPIG is that it's a little silly. I think we need that right now. I think we need that always, really. We can't always live in crisis mode. Our nervous systems aren't meant to take that. Humor, especially in the midst of crises, is one of the important things that get us through. But remember, JETPIG is powered by love. So JETPIG doesn't ask us to blithely ignore the issues around us. Instead, JETPIG invites us to consider the possibilities in the moment we find ourselves in. What does it look like if we accept the fact that our fears are going to come along on our journeys? What if we choose to continue it together anyway? Because Star Trek, as much as I love it and I think it asks important questions, it isn't real. But I think that's the role of fiction, to point us to the important truths that we might otherwise miss. But JETPIG, remember, is an acrostic for how the member congregations of the UUA have voted for us to be together. Maybe it's language that rings true for you as an individual as well. I know it does for me. So this is us, writing our own story together, the story of who we are as we travel the universe on this great blue marble. What do we want JETPIG's Guide to Interstellar Travel to look like? Now, travel guides have a few pretty reliable sections, offering us, the travelers, suggestions for where we can stay, what we can do, what we can eat, and how we can navigate this place. Now, as we, across the UU, write this guide together, we don't know what the next months and years are going to look like. I wish I could tell you that, because I like certainty too. But this travel guide, JETPIG's travel guide, doesn't sugarcoat the challenges. It will, however, help our readers find the hidden gems in their interstellar journey. So first, where to stay? That part seems pretty obvious. I mean, big blue marble in space. And yet, there's so much to say here. Travelers make a difference wherever they go. There are many places on Earth where tourism is the main driver of the economy. But in some of those places, the impact of humanity has left a legacy of harm in the ecosystem. There are other places where people move more lightly on the land. I think that JETPIG would say that keeping love at the center means coexisting with nature, with other non-human beings, and with other humans with a gentle touch. We, and our readers, cannot leave no trace of our presence on this planet we call home. But we and they can choose to exist in harmony. We have a collective responsibility to be civically engaged in a way that keeps us moving toward climate justice. And you are part of the ecosystem, and climate justice does not ask you to martyr yourself in order to be an eco-superhero. You are the only one who knows what it feels like to live in harmony for you with all of the beings around you, including yourself. I think JETPIG would want us to include that. Spend time in nature, in the quiet, even if it's just a little bit of green on your windowsill, to hear the notes that ring in harmony with the universe. So let's imagine that next we have to tell our readers, these plucky travelers setting out on their journey, that the category of what to do is going to have a little bit of flux in it. I honestly can't imagine what it's like to be a Marie Curie, a Mae Jemison, a Michelle Obama, or Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But here's the thing about legends. Even those who are living and those who exist only in our collective memory now. The real ones are very seldom legends in their own heads. I've always been fascinated with biographies and autobiographies, and I especially love hearing about how people like the women I mentioned, or like Harvey Milk, Alan Turing, George Washington Carver, or Barack Obama, these people who changed history, how they found the place from which to do the things they've done, and which some of them continue to do. And it usually comes back to one thing. They're really not heading out into the unknown alone. They bring a little bit of home along with them. They bring the strength of their community, of the influences that have shaped them. Even astronauts like to have ice cream sandwiches. So maybe we remind the readers of JETPIG's Guide to Interstellar Travel that while their exploration of the universe may have some really unexpected moments as they decide what to do, choosing their travel companions well will be an important part of enjoying their trip through space. So now, how to navigate? Well, just as in the days of clipper ships and before that, the wayfarers who navigated whole oceans in outrigger canoes, we navigate both by the stars and by the truths that call us forward, and we navigate by our connection to each other, to the world around us, to the things we hold dear. As we consider what to tell our intrepid readers about how to navigate, I invite you to consider these words by Anna Bladel. Today and tomorrow, keep breathing, keep feeling, keep connecting. Take a break, drink some water, move your body. Don't give up, weep. Find some glimpse of beauty, fierce generosity, tenderness. Fix your attention on that for a while. Some practices need to be repeated over and over and over again. March, resist, rage, make art. Listen to music, plant seeds, laugh, gather at table, share poems, light candles. Remember to dream, to imagine. Every small act of radical love, fierce tenderness, and brave resistance births new worlds of possibility. Liberation is long labor, and we need each other so deeply. And finally, what to eat. Now, speaking of ice cream for astronauts, the next section of JETPIG's Guide to Interstellar Travel is what to eat. It seems almost silly in the midst of the weighty matters that are involved in a trip on this blue boat home, and yet, I would argue that this may be the most important section. Now, one of the interesting things, I'm going to take you back to Star Trek just for a moment, that you see in what I spoke of as the development over the series. Now, in the first Star Trek, the original series, we see these really strange foods. Turns out they were just dying like melon cubes, but they were using them to substitute for, to show this imagined like processed food blocks that they were eating. And it, was about as appealing as it sounds. And then as you see the series continue, things start to change. You see in the next generation, Jean-Luc Picard becomes known for his Earl Grey tea, hot, of course. As you continue in the series, there comes to be this really important part that's not really acknowledged, that they all gather around sharing food and beverage and tables together. At table is where the captains cook, despite having a replicator, cook with their hands for their crew. Around the tables in the lounge is where crew members share drinks they know and introduce their crew members, their family, to new experiences. It's where they share the difficult moments and where they share the hope that they have on their long journey. I think that although we cannot, at least right now, spend a whole lot of time sharing food around a table floating in space. Maybe it's coming. We might be able to do that soon. But we can create that here, and we can do the same things. We sustain each other and ourselves by connecting in community around the comfort of sharing food. There's this lovely scene in another book by Becky Chambers where they have a chef who has become separated from his people. There was a terrible war and genocide, and he becomes a chef on this little ship that is boring holes through space to create interstellar roads. And one of the protagonists in the book is talking to him and saying, this is terrible. You had so much, and now you're stuck here on this little ship in this little kitchen. And the chef says, there is peace out here in the open. I have friends and a garden in the stars and a kitchen full of tasty things. We, on our blue boat home, are out here in the open. We have friends. We live on a garden in the stars, and we have so many kitchens full of tasty things. So, what do we tell the readers of JETPIG's Guide to Interstellar Travel as we close up the guide and send them on their way? We tell them to choose each other, remembering that they are also a part of we. We tell them, we tell us, to create and find comfort, connection, and community. Told you I'd tell you the answer ahead of time. And we join them in carrying forward the hope of the 1977 Golden Record. We step out of our solar system into the universe, seeking only peace and friendship, to teach if we are called upon, to be taught if we are fortunate. May it be so. Now, continuing the experiment with the community blessing, thank you. We'll do the adapted version this Sunday. We'll do the original version other Sundays. In the future, we'll be asking your feedback about your preference. As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join me now in our community blessing with these words of David Bumbaugh, slightly adapted. This church is dedicated to the proposition that by embracing our differences and celebrating our diversity, we honor the unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.